This is Brother Ron, and welcome to We All Be News Radio and TV, the news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
Now let's get back to this fundamental thing about assault rifles. See, this is sheer propaganda, and it's misleading. There aren't assault rifles out there on the streets. Let me be clear. The first qualification for a real assault rifle is that it is a full auto machine gun. If it is not a machine gun, it's not an assault rifle. Full automatic weapons for the military come in three types: full service, light, or general purpose machine guns. They fire what used to be known as a full power rifle caliber. 7.62 NATO or old 30 06 or 7.92 Mauser or 303 British. You have to make that weapon pretty heavy, like the bar that the U.S. Army used to use in World War II, World War I, or the British Bren gun. They weighed 19 going on 20 pounds. It took that much weight for it to be controllable. Then on the other end of the scale, you had submachine guns that fired pistol caliber ammunition, like the 45 caliber Thompson, the 9mm Schmeiser, or MP5 or Uzi. Those are called submachine guns. In the middle, you had a new thing called the intermediate cartridge. It was halfway in power between a full standard rifle cartridge and a pistol cartridge. And that is a cartridge of reduced power that allows it to be fired full auto in a weapon that weighs from maybe 6 to maybe 8 or 9 pounds and controllable by the average soldier. The first assault rifle was named that by one and only, none other than Adolf Hitler. They had come up with this thing in 1943, and the German army was issuing these things to its troops, and they called it MP43, machine pistol or submachine gun, 1943, to hide it from Hitler. He got wind of it. He was storming about it since he didn't approve of the concept. But when he went out, they let him fire it, and he fell in love with it, and he said, this is a new thing. This is the Sturmgewehr. In other words, the storm rifle or assault rifle. Hitler named it. And once he named it, they changed the designation from machine pistol 43 to Sturmgewehr 44. And it fired a reduced caliber 7.92 Kurtz round that's quite similar to what the Russians use, their 7.62 by 39 Komblok round. The Russians had actually invented that round and had what was a semi-auto weapon that fired it, so it was easier to control than the U.S. Army's M1 Garand. Now that, understand, is a rifle that the great General Patton called the best battlefield implement ever invented. But now I'll get back to that in a second. Mm-hmm. Russians came up with the AK-47. The U.S. did not get the idea, and they wound up adopting a turkey known as the M14 that you can buy now, civilian-wise, called the M18. Nobody objects to that. It's a full-powered rifle, but very few people can control it in anything other than semi-auto, and the U.S. Army never issued it in anything other than semi-auto. It takes a 20-round magazine. The M1 Garand took an 8-round magazine. However, in 1908, Browning and Winchester started selling the Model 8, which was invented by John Browning, and it took a 5-round clip with 15, 20, and 30-round clips available through the mail 100 years ago. It was quite popular with law enforcement and with the ordinary hunters. In the 1950s, Remington came out with the 740 Game Master, which is semi-automatic. It's 30 caliber. It's a heavy caliber. It ordinarily comes with a 5-round magazine, but for 60-some years, you've been able to get 10 and 20-round clips for that thing, or magazine. Now, guess when they came up with the AR-15? They came up with that thing in 1952. That was 55 years ago. It is the oldest serving rifle in U.S. military history, the longest serving one. Now, the thing about the caliber of the AR-15 is it's a 22 caliber rifle, and there has been a long debate in the U.S. military in that particular caliber in the hunting world is suitable only for varmints, rabbits, squirrels, gophers, groundhogs, and general stuff like that. In most states, it's considered too small to hunt a 100-pound deer with. The military says it doesn't have enough stopping power on one half of the field, and the other half says we don't want it to, because if we took the old-time stuff, you could kill somebody quite easily with that, and you just leave him there and rot. But if you wound somebody, it takes 8 to 9 to 10 people to take care of. We'd rather wound. So there has been that internal debate about the 5.56 by 45 NATO cartridge, which in civilian guys is known approximately as the 223. It's a 22 caliber thing. It is most suited for varmints, not people. And if you really wanted to do some damage to somebody, you'd get a 12-gauge pump shotgun. Now, if you have practiced with a 12-gauge shotgun, a pump, you can do some very, very interesting things. I've seen people do this, and I can do it personally. If you've got low recoil buckshot, and you really know how to work a pump, and you work with it a lot, you can get 5 rounds off with all 4 empty cases still in the air before the first one hits the ground. It sounds like a machine gun when you do that, but it's not. It's just an old-time pump. And remember when we come out with the pump, Winchester came out with the thing in 1892, and then they had a famous one that went for a long time that came out in 1897. That's been more than 120-some years ago. So we're not talking about anything new. I have seen people with a revolver. They've got a guy named Jerry Mikulik with Smith & Wesson. He's a demonstration shooter. He can take a revolver and get off 8 shots on target in less than a second. It just goes, boom, sounds faster than a machine gun. It's firing faster than a typical military machine gun. He just did it with his finger. He can't fire a 45 auto, semi-auto that fast because the mechanism can't keep up with his finger. I've seen people who with a semi-auto shotgun, Browning number 5, that's 110 years old, I've seen them work it so fast on the trigger finger, the action can't keep up with it. I can work an AR with my fingers, no additional stuff on it. I can get 7 or 8 empty shells up in the air before the first hits the ground. Well, most of the time, 4 or 5. But, you see, that's with anything. I've seen a guy do a demonstration with an 1873 single-action Colt and 45, fanning this thing, get 5 shots on target in less than a second, draw the second one, and get another 5 shots on target That's 10, so he's got 10 rounds on target in under 2 seconds.
Mm.
Now, what are you going to do about that? And then here's the other thing. I've taken martial arts for 50-some years. There are a number of people in this town I know that have been taking it for a long time. A very good, close, and personal friend of mine that worked as an executive on the show. He is a grand master. We can walk in someplace and kill you very quickly, very quietly. Nobody will know, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you have the level of expertise that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we go into schools all the time and talk to the kids, but we don't kill anybody.
Right.
See, I saw a magazine at a magazine stand not long ago, and it was horrified that 12 and 14-year-old boys in the Middle East were coming to school with AK-47s and a ceremonial knife stuck down in the front of their belt, and actually one of them had 2 hand grenades hooked up and spare magazines. So they were horrified that these kids were armed. But I looked at it and I said, oh my, they come to school with real, fully automatic machine gun type assault rifles. But they don't kill each other. We can't let kids go to high school with a nail file because they might take somebody out. What's the difference? It's man training. Now, let's do another bonking. AR does not stand for assault rifle.
Okay.
In 1952, a guy named Eugene Stoner invented the design, and he patented it. He sold the design to Fairchild Aircraft Company, which assigned it to their division of weaponry known as Armalite. AR stands for Armalite. Well, somewhat later, Colt bought it out. Bought out the Fairchild division. Now, they offered, in 1954, they offered the AR design to the U.S. Army, and they did not select it. They selected the miserable semi-auto, 20-round magazine, 7.62 caliber, M14, which they kept for 6 years before they got rid of it. Well, 1962, General Curtis LeMay, United States Air Force Commanding General, wanted the guards who were armed with M1 carbines to have something newer because the M1 carbines that everybody has got in their garage or closet, if they're over a certain age, because you could get them for less than $10 through the mail. Well, he wanted his old carbines replaced, so he caused the Air Force to buy from Colt these AR-15s. When the military got them, they became known as the M16. The current rifle for the military now is a carbine version of that, known as the M4. That follows in sequence behind the M1 carbine of World War II fame that everybody's got one of in their closet, or at least granddad does. And then there was an M2, which was a fully automatic version of that, not semi, and both of them took 15 and 30-round magazines. There was an M3, which was experimental, and the M4 is the current standard issue to the U.S. military. It has a 14.5-inch barrel, which is illegal to possess under most circumstances. What you can get is a semi-auto version that looks like it, but it's got a 16-inch barrel, or if it has a 14-inch barrel and a half-inch barrel, it's got a permanently affixed gadget of some sort on the muzzle to make it 16 inches from the base of the chamber to the end of the muzzle. The attraction to this design, which is now America's most popular rifle, it comes in all sorts of calibers, is that it is a modern rifle. The rifle that everybody associates with hunting is the bolt action.
Okay.
Mauser invented a bolt action way, way back when. And in no less than 1842, the Prussian Army adopted the first military bolt action. It was a pinfire weapon. They called it the needle gun. Not pinfire, it was called the needle gun, and the Prussian Army adopted it in 1842, stored up enough of them to equip their army in 1848. So that's how old everybody's typical hunting rifle is. Now, the Winchester lever action is newer than the bolt action. But the bolt action was popular in Europe. America had the lever action, the Spencer, which is quite an effective weapon. They issued a lot of them in the Civil War. In 1892, the U.S. decided to replace its trapdoor Springfield single shot rifle. 1892, they replaced it with their first bolt action known as the Craig Jorgensen. It fired a caliber known as 30-40 Craig. They didn't like it because it wasn't powerful enough when they got into, the Spanish-American War and got into the Philippines and got to dealing with the Moros who didn't take kindly to it and ignored getting shot with it. So they sent over a lot of pump-action Winchester Model 97 shotguns to deal with the close-in threat. Now, again, that's probably the most dangerous thing you could shoot somebody with at close range. Let somebody go off with one who knows how to use it in a school, you'd really get a bloodbath. But, that's been around for 120 years. So what we get then is we have the Spanish-American War. The U.S. Army kind of got jacked around because the Cubans had a Mauser, the 1892 Mauser. So the U.S. liked it. They hooked up a deal with the German Mauser company to make one under license. It was known as the 30 caliber Springfield. They were paying the Mauser firm a license fee, which they stopped paying in World War I. But most hunting rifles that you see today are takeoffs off of the Mauser, the 1898 Mauser, which is what? 120 years old. Guess what? So if you want to get a perspective, if you look at all of the cowboy movies made in the 1950s, the black and white type, featuring John Wayne and Clint Eastwood et al., usually you see them using an 1892 Winchester. The perspective you should have is at the time they made these cowboy movies, that 1892 Winchester was a newer design than the AR-15 is today. It was only, 50-some years old. 56 years old. 57 years old. The AR is 65 years old. And it's just bringing it up to date. It uses modern manufacturing methods. People say, well, what about these high-capacity magazines that they have with it? Who needs 30 rounds? Well, they've had those same 20 and 30-round magazines available on the American market for more than 100 years for various semi-auto rifles that have a lot more stopping power than a 22 caliber Stoner design. So when you hear AR-15, it's not an assault rifle. You've got some people with an agenda that have the news, and they are pulling all sorts of stunts